The power plant, if we ever build one, it will take us 10 to 15 years to build it. And we should start today. We cannot wait. We shouldn't wait until we have waste in the surface. We have to start today, almost 20 years earlier, before the waste comes into our stream for a final placement of the waste. So that's the vision that we have, that it's an opportunity for us to start now in our journey to have power plants in Alberta.
Welcome to the Project Report. Join your host, Elyse Dzenick, as she sits with researchers and highly qualified personnel working on FES-funded research. Explore what they're working on, why it matters, and what's to come.
Today, I'm sitting down with Dr. Gonzalo Zambrano Narvaez to talk about nuclear energy in Canada. Gonzalo works at the University of Alberta's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. He's been researching nuclear energy and specializes in subsurface storage of nuclear waste. Thank you so much for joining me today, Gonzalo.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So I understand that Canada has been recognized as an international leader in nuclear energy since the 1970s, and most of it comes from Ontario. What makes Canada an international leader?
There's different tier levels, and Canada is tier 1 and 2, meaning that we not only can produce power, but we export power technology.
What are some misconceptions that you've heard about nuclear energy?
The misconception, I think, leads more about not having the technology in our backyard. Socially, we're not familiar with the technology. And that, by default, raises the challenge of how we educate the society about how safe is nuclear. And so any information that we know about nuclear, it is what comes through failure cases in Europe, recently in Japan. But the technology is very safe. If you look at Ontario or New Brunswick or Quebec, they have programs that educate kids from high school level about nuclear and fusion. What is fusion? Bringing the base of the population understand what is nuclear and what is the risk, what is the pros, what is the cons. We don't have it in our system in Western Canada. It starts with almost by invitations, what communities want, they have the power plant. There's a protocol Canada has where power is generated by the provinces. The Nuclear Act, the Nuclear Waste Act has those languages that if you have a power plant, you have to pay fees to put money on the side to deal with the waste. No other nations have that format or that framework. The reality is that we will need to have addition of energy into our system, and nuclear it will come as an additional. It wouldn't be a substitution of the current energy sources that we use, but it will be an addition.
You mentioned risk of failure. The risk of failure of nuclear energy is pretty low. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Many of these plants are designed different than any building or even the engineering portion. For example, even in new plants, power fails and the reactor stabilizes, the water will come down and flood in the system automatically. Now, the things that we have seen in failure in Europe, mainly because the plant was operated wrong. No, it's nothing to do with the plant itself. It was operated in a way that it should never operate it. And the case of recently in Japan with the tsunami, the engineering structure survived the earthquake. It's not a story that we hear it. We see the failure, but we understand the design survived the earthquake that was 10 times the design of the plant. The water flooded and it eliminates backup powers and any other elements that was needed to keep the plant stable.
What are you researching about nuclear waste?
This is a program around the world, how we can find permanent place for the waste. So currently, because finding a permanent location, it requires some social aspects that the communities that will host this permanent location only can be considered if they were by invitation of the same community. So there's an organization, it's called NWMO. NWMO is part of the Nuclear Act, the Nuclear Waste Act. They are the only entity that can manage high-level waste. So currently, if you have a power plant, your waste, there's 3 levels: low level, intermediate level, and high level. If it's ranked as a high level, which in essence is used fuel, NWMO is responsible for that. And they have facilities that they put this high level waste on the surface. There's a protocol for decay. There's some time period, 10, 20 years to decay. And after that, the decay stage happens, temperatures are more stable. So then you can take the fuel waste and put into deep geological repository, which is a shaft and tunneling structures. So currently, all the waste is in the surface.
Wow. So it sounds like that's not a very permanent solution for nuclear waste.
Correct. And that's why the deep geological repository, which Canada already is building one, it is a solution for permanent waste. For high level, it has a lot of layers of safety, like copper layers, bentonite, concrete structure. So it's the safety around these sites. They are designed for 1 million years. Now, for my research, the type of waste that will come into the surface for the technology that's going to be deployed in Western Canada, which is small modular reactors, there's a little bit unknown into that space. Canada has the first small modular reactor with the Ontario Power Generation as Power. Another entity in Saskatchewan will buy. Another entity in Alberta, Capital Power, is considering to buy the same Canadian mononuclear reactor. The challenge to that is that because we don't have reactors active, we don't know the type of waste and volumes and quantities that we'll receive. There's many options for dealing permanent place. One of the options that NWMO also look into that, it is a concept is called deep borehole disposal. The advantage of deep borehole disposal is you rely with natural barriers and deep natural barriers, like we're looking at kilometers deep. It's a borehole that is going to be sealed, it's not going to be in contact with the fluid, and the nuclear waste is going to be deposited into the borehole. Some of the work that we just published in Geoconvention, it was looking to how we can define zones of isolation. So meaning that ancient waters, ancient oceans that has never been mobilized for billions of years, how we can find them, because those are the most suitable place for us to deploy this technology and rely with the kilometers of rock on top of us as isolation for permanent place of intermediate level waste. One of the protocols that exist for nuclear waste, high level waste particularly, it is that it should be retrievable. We should be able maybe to still harvest the energy of these used fuels. Deep borehole disposal, one of the biggest challenges that it had when it first was presented back in early 2000s, it was the capacity to retrieve the canister. Advance that has been in places in the States, in Europe, that we can retrieve this using kind of oil and gas technology. You retrieve tools from downhole, but there be some trials on how we can retrieve overpack, which is the container. Yeah.
Part of your research is consulting communities and looking at the actual land itself and geological properties. What sorts of geological properties are you looking at?
We consult them, but we walk with them, because that's important as academics to understand at the community level how they see the program and the vision. When entities like Capital Power do these community engagements, we participate in those events. Capital Power, they are doing their own agenda, but we are part of the community. That's what I'm saying. We walk as a member of the community. It's important to understand their needs and their gaps. Now, on the technical aspect, Alberta has a core repository. So if you drill a well in Alberta, by law, you have to keep the core that was sampled from the well to a core research repository. So we have a huge database of material for deeper wells that were exploration wells never produced. And once we find a suitable location, we will find the core or samples from already being drilled and being stored, and bring it to the lab to do some thermal conductivity measurements, kind of a mechanical response by heating the rock. And because eventually the rock is going to be heated by this nuclear waste. So we understand what is the constitutive behavior of this material, so we can constrain our numerical modeling given this natural response.
What do you look at to ensure that a site is completely safe, to ensure that your packaging for the nuclear waste is completely safe as well?
So at the moment, we are trying to develop a ranking criteria that considers remote communities, particularly location of First Nations. And this is looking to that as one of the not only geological ranking criteria, but also who lives in the land. That's important for us, at least for us, to define suitable places that we should be looking for locations for deep borehole disposal. So at the moment, the program, because we are so early in the deploying the technology, it is defining where we can put them and define geological units. So we are hiring, we just finished hiring doctoral students and postdocs and master students. And we are planning to do some laboratory testing. Once we find geological units and that are suitable because they are hydraulically isolated, we're gonna do some laboratory testing to collect properties of the rock and model them numerically. My program is called the Deep Safe. It will eventually define what is the status of this technology in the globe. We're doing a regulatory review for Alberta, and we also are planning to do some laboratory testing. Another lower technology readiness level, TR level, is looking at atomic geothermal as a concept. There is some discussions about can we put a small modular reactor or a micro small modular reactor into the borehole and leave it there, use it and leave it there, so that we eliminate transportation, we eliminate permanent place, everything stays there after use, 1.5 kilometers deep. The techno-economics is important, especially how Western Canada deals with developing technology and going to the private sector, and very likely we're gonna be benefit for the development of geothermal. We are kind of following the evolution of deep drilling because that will benefit the techno-economics of deep borehole disposal.
How did you end up where you are as a nuclear expert balancing research, partnerships, and advocacy?
I think it's important. It's part of a role, I think, for academic practitioners or professors that to be advocate and inform about the public as an independent. Where the technology sits, there's a lot of advantage, I think. I see it. The concept, I was reading a thesis of MIT. That was the whole concept started. And back in early 2000s, I noticed that the Department of Energy in the States was assigning an MIT to look into this deep borehole disposal as an option. And since then, I've been following the theme of how it has evolved. There's other researchers as well that look into this in Saskatchewan. I saw the opportunity of the timing and announcements that has happened in Alberta. I was lucky to have the support of Capital Power, is one of the sponsors. Also, Alberta Innovates, Clean Energy Technology sponsor also the program. Those three entities are kind of the pillar, and also I'm very thankful for Fusion Assistance that they decide to support my seed funding in this journey of deep borehole disposal.
What is important for the general public, for people to know about the future of nuclear power in Alberta or in Canada?
I think it's an opportunity that we should jump on. We will not have a nuclear power plant in the next 15, 20 years because these units takes time to build. They have to go through a very regulatory program that imposes these timelines. And the opportunity for us to engage in the technology today is that will benefit because we not only be able to understand the gaps and the risks, but we'll also be able to manage it. And that's important, how we manage those risks. And if we are in the trenches today, we can have the capacity in the future. So I think we should take the opportunity. The world is gonna demand more electricity. The world will move into the electrification of the transportation sector, and that by default will come with the demand of more electrodes. And we will need addition of energy generation. For renewables, for nuclear, we're going to rely on hydrocarbons for many, many years, many decades. But we need that addition of energy into the system. Yeah.
And last but not least, where can people go to learn more about your research?
Which is Deep Safe, is my program that is looking to deep borehole disposal. There's the regulator, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commissioner, CNSC. There is a Canadian Nuclear Laboratory as well. And NWMO is another place that you should be looking, because they're really in the trenches dealing with the current power generation and current waste. The elements that I mentioned about my vision of my research is the new forms of waste and the lower volumes that we receive in Alberta or Saskatchewan, where they're going to be different of the current waste. And that's where we're trying to put ourselves ahead of the game, so we're ready for providing tangible solutions for these challenges.
Awesome. Thank you so much for talking with us today, and good luck with everything in the future.
No, thank you. Thank you.